Every piece of ground on Battleworld was somebody else's world first, not a metaphor. Whatever rock you're standing on there got cut out of a dead reality and bolted on. Whose world is under your feet? The internet's full of theories about that place, but have you ever been told what the ground itself cost? Because a man built it out of the wreckage of every universe that ever existed. So where did the power to do that come from? He built a planet. He built a police force. He built a wall 250 feet tall and 16,000 miles long, and he laid every stone of it himself. Picture standing at the bottom of that. But there was still one thing he could not build. The dying has a name. The comics call it an incursion, and that word hides a lot. Here's the mechanic. Two universes touch. One has to die, or both do. Simple enough, until we run it. So we run it, over and over, across the whole multiverse, and watch the count drop. Hundreds of thousands of realities, down past 100, down to 20-odd, then down to 2. 2. So the last day of everything isn't a war. It's 2 Earths in one sky over Manhattan, and everybody underneath is watching them come together. Would you look up? Every face on that page does. Then the book prints a gravestone. Marvel Universe, 1961 to 2015. It's the panel fans point at when they say Marvel actually did it. No wink, no reset. Everything you've ever read about ends right there. Except a handful of people build an escape pod out of the ending. A raft. It launches from a collapsing tower, takes a hit from something cosmic, tears open, loses a whole section, and then it lands. Lands where? Hold on to that one, because there isn't supposed to be a somewhere. Right, the power to do that. Every theory fans trade about how Doom ends up a god stops at the throne, and it was never his power to begin with. Years before the end, he goes looking for where the dying started, and what's waiting at the bottom of it isn't an engine, it isn't a weapon, it's a man. Owen Reese. He calls himself the Molecule Man, the leftover of a machine built by the enormous things that had been pruning universes for sport. Ever wonder what an apocalypse is made of? It's made of him. So Doom starts killing him, not once, copy after copy, reality after reality for years, and not out of spite, which is the bit that should worry you. He's pushing one man toward the state where he stops being a person and becomes a key. Therefore, on the last day, 3 of them go up to meet the owners of that power. Doom, Owen Reese, a man called Steven. I'll be honest, nobody ever tells you this part. They fly into the light, and only one of them comes back down holding anything. And what he came back with isn't his. He's carrying stolen power, and the only reason he can carry it is that Owen Reese is alive underneath the world, holding it up. How stable does that sound to you? But the god of this world is renting. Here's the somewhere. He didn't remake the universe. He couldn't. And I'll tell you now, what he did instead is stranger. What he made is a patchwork, fragments of dead realities cut into territories and set side by side on one sphere. Different timelines, different versions of the same people. Worlds fans still argue can't coexist, now sharing a border. Remember, there isn't supposed to be a somewhere. Yet the map is printed in the back of the second issue, and every border on it is a scar. Have you ever looked at a map like that? Every square's a kingdom, and every kingdom's a piece of something that already died. Higher Avalon, Utopolis, Bar Sinister, run by a Baron Sinister. They aren't sequels to each other. They're survivors of each other. So try this with me. Picture your own street. Now picture the version where everyone on it died 400 years ago. They're neighbors now. There's a fence between them, a guard on the fence, and a court deciding which one was in the right. That's the real geography. What is that exactly? Battleworld isn't a planet he created, it's a mass grave he arranged. So who keeps a mass grave in order? A world stitched out of pieces that hate each other needs a very particular government, and I'd slow right down on his, because there's nothing else shaped like it. Every territory gets a baron who rules absolutely inside his own border and kneels absolutely outside it. Above them sits a court with a sheriff running it, and the first man to hold that job is called Stephen. But the thing that tells you most about him isn't the law, it's the police. He built an army of Thors. Not Thor, Thors. Hundreds of them, recruited by a hammer that only lifts for the worthy, housed in a floating citadel called Doomguard, sent out to enforce his word in every kingdom. Picture that from the ground. You look up, and there are 12 of them in your sky, and every single one is Thor. What do you even do with that? That's the trick, though. He took the most recognizable symbol of heroism in the entire dead multiverse, mass-produced it, and made it his police force. Not vanity, design. Because nobody argues with a Thor. Except the ones nobody could police at all. He couldn't fix everything, and the walls where you get to watch him admit it. Down one edge of Battleworld runs the Shield, 250 feet tall, 16,000 miles long. And I checked, the page says he laid every stone of it himself. So what needs a fence that size? The Deadlands first. Would you believe he zoned a district for the Walking Dead? An entire region of his own world signed over to them. Then the Annihilation Wave, a swarm that eats worlds. Then a self-replicating Ultron intelligence, still evolving behind the stone. And he couldn't delete any of it. Here's where I'd stop calling him a god. He's holding the power of the things that ended the multiverse, and he can't make 3 bad neighborhoods go away. So he fences them. He garrisons the fence. And when a baron displeases him, he punishes that baron by walking him to the top of it and telling him to jump. Not an execution, a walk to the wall. Fans argue about this one. Put it in the comments. Which domain on that map would you take? There are worse answers than the Deadlands. But the thing actually holding all of this upright was never the wall. The answer's a story. Look at what he did to the past, because a kingdom turns into a religion right about here. The Thors get taught a creation account. God Doom made the light. God Doom raised the kingdoms out of the cooled firmament. New recruits hear it the way you'd hear scripture, and every word of it arrives as plain history. But then his own scientists dig something out of the ground that dates to before the creation. It's Valeria who runs the numbers, and the numbers say it's older than the world it was found in. So does anybody examine it? No. The sheriff quarantines it, and a Thor explains the policy to a rookie in the plainest line in the book. Quarantine isn't for things that are dangerous, it's for things that cause doubt. Police force or church? And I think that's the smartest thing in the whole book. It isn't a lie. Every fact he taught them is true. What he controlled was where the story starts. Ask yourself when your own version of events begins, and who picked that moment. A story that starts at his creation has no room for a question about what came before, but a question doesn't need room. Therefore, the whole structure has exactly one failure mode, and it was never an army. It's memory. Every piece of it, the barons, the court, the Thors, the wall, the scripture, the quarantine, does one job, making sure nobody on Battleworld can check, and it holds beautifully, right up until the checking starts. So what does checking look like? Let me give you 3, and they land on him together. A ship falls out of his sky carrying people who remember a different universe. An object surfaces from his ground that predates his creation. And up at Doomguard, a Thor learns the truth about where his god's power really comes from, then says it out loud in the Great Hall. Remember, nobody argues with a Thor? Turns out they'll argue with each other. The police force he built to enforce belief starts beating itself with Mjolnir inside its own citadel, and a wing of them flies down on Castle Doom. He watches it from a window, standing with his family, and you'd expect rage. Instead, he says flatly that he's been betrayed again, not by an enemy, by the thing he built most carefully. Which of those would sting worse? And watch what he doesn't do, because I find this the strangest beat in the book. He doesn't fight. It was never power that failed him. He took that off the things that ended everything. It wasn't order. It wasn't law. It wasn't architecture, and it wasn't the wall. Can you see what's missing from that list? So what was any of it for? Everyone on that world was breathing because of him, and he couldn't get one of them to mean it. That was the one thing he could not build, and he wouldn't hear it.
Watch how Battleworld ends. It doesn't crack because somebody outpunched him. It cracks in an argument, which means it was never a planet. It was a claim. Handed the wreckage of every dead world, he'd run it better than the ones who lost it. And the worst part for me, he was half right. By the end, he's got everything, and nobody who means it. The man playing him in live action is Robert Downey Jr., and the first film hits theaters December 18th of 2026. But it hasn't happened on screen yet. As of August 2026, the comic is the only place Battleworld is real.